let's take a look at this equation. N times 3 plus 5 equals y. Okay, one thing to notice here is that we have n and y, which are not numbers, right? We call those variables. And since they're variables, that means that we need to figure out what they are. However, I will just go ahead and tell you, when we have two variables, we can't figure out what they are. We can't figure out what their value is. The only way to figure out what their value is if we have only one variable in our equation. So the way that normally these problems will work is they'll give you an equation like this, and then they'll ask you to solve for y if n equals, and then they'll give it a value. Let me show you what I mean by that. On page 459 of your math book, that's where I took this equation from, and they want you to solve for y if n equals 1, okay? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the number 1 instead of n, and then we can figure out what y equals if n equals 1. I'll show you what I mean. When n equals 1, I'm going to replace the n with the number 1. So watch me rewrite it. Instead of n, I'm going to write a 1, okay? Everything else in this equation, I'm going to write exactly how it was. So 1 times 3, in parentheses, plus 5 equals y. See how I copied everything else the same? The only thing I changed was I replaced n for 1. Now I can solve according to the order of operations, which is PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay, so the first thing, the P is parentheses. So I solve parentheses first. 1 times 3, 3. I just write the answer right below, and I copy everything else the same. I'm done with that, so I already solved it. Everything else, though, I haven't used yet, so I'm going to copy these exactly the same. 3 plus 5 equals y. The next step is to solve exponents, but we don't have any exponents in this problem. Multiplication, we already did that. We don't have any division, so the next step is addition. And we do have addition. We have 3 plus 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. I copy it below, and I'm done with that. And so I copy the rest, which is equals y. 8 equals y. Well, if 8 equals y, then that means that y equals 8, right? We can just flip that around. If 8 equals y, then y equals 8. They equal each other, okay? So we have figured out what y equals if n equals 1. And we can record this in a nice little input-output table. Okay, we've talked about these. Let me show you how we do that. Our input was the letter N, and our output was the letter Y. So now I'm just going to record what I found. If N equaled 1, I put a 1 there because that's what I put in for N. If N equaled 1, Y equaled 8. Okay, and now we can try other numbers for N. So let's try a different number for N and see what we get. Okay, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to rewrite the exact same equation that we had at the beginning. Too big. Let's try writing it again. It was n times 3 plus 5 equals y. So let's try putting, instead of 1 for n, let's try putting 2. So our question is, if n equals 2, what does y equal? How do I solve it? I need to replace the n with the number 2. And everything else I copy exactly the same. So we have 2 times 3 plus 5 equals y. We follow the order of operations, and we know that the p comes first. So we're going to we're going to solve the parentheses first. 2 times 3 is what we have here in parentheses. So the answer for 2 times 3 is 6, and I write that below, and I copy everything else exactly the same. Plus 5 equals y. So I know now that 6 plus 5 equals y. I need to solve my addition. 6 plus 5 is 11, and I copy everything else the same. Okay, we did that. Copy the equals y. 11 equals y. If 11 equals y, that means that y equals 11. They equal each other. So if n is 2, y is 11. Okay, and you could keep going, trying different numbers as well. I'm going to show you a couple more, and then we'll be good to go. So if n equals, and I'm just going to reuse some of this stuff. I don't have to rewrite all of it. Let's try if n equals 3. If n equals 3, then I would be doing 3 times 3, which is 9, and then adding the 5. 9 plus 5 is 14. So 14 equals y. Y equals 14. So I would write in my input-output table, if n equals 3, y equals 14. The last thing I want you to remember is that it doesn't matter which number we put in the input. It just matters that we use that number to solve for the output. So I know right now I'm going 1, 2, 3 for my input, but I don't have to do that. I could put them in any order. So like I could try a random number now. Like what if I skipped ahead to 9? I can do that because I have my equation, and so I don't need to go in order to figure them out. I can plug any number in for my variable. So I'm going to plug the number, what did I say? 9 in for my variable. So I'm replacing the n with the 9, and I'm just going to solve from here. Parentheses come first. 9 times 3 is 27, and then add 5 more, and I will get what? 32. 32 equals y. Y equals 32. So in my chart, I can just record. I put the 9, and then I write the 32 for the y. Y equals 32 if n equals 9. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on practicing today.